So I mean, I guess we can start from the base. So what happened at first? Just like with any relationship, man, it was great. Like we hung out. We didn't hang out too much. Like we weren't like suffocating each other. We were just kind of. She had her own place. Like she lived in the dorm in the same building as I did. So
Right.
we weren't too far away. And then we kind of started moving fast when things started getting more serious. Of course, like we slept together pretty quickly. Um,
Moved in together.
moved in together probably like 5 months, which I do not recommend. And we were in a dorm together,
Right.
and so it's just a small area. We're around each other 24/7. It's a guy's floor. So I
Yeah.
mean that's a cool story. I'd have to like sneak her into the guy's shower and we
Oh
shower at
god.
like. But so yeah, and so like I said, things are so great in the beginning. Like I mean, it's beautiful, man. It's like for example, like it almost seemed like a fairy tale. The way I asked her out, we had this favorite restaurant downtown. It's called El Herederos.
Mhm.
And as we went there, we always would go there when we were just kind of in the beginning stages of hanging out. She'd always order chimichanga. I would,
Oh heck yeah.
we loved the chips and salsa there. It's like our thing. We would like throw you get the little thing off the straws and we'd be like
Right.
throwing them
Just
at each
throwing at each
other.
other.
But and then so the way I asked her out was because I changed my friend Connor's number, like his name on my phone, to "Will you date me?" So he
Oh
called me,
nice.
and I was like, "Hey, look at this," and it said like, "Will you date me?" So she could either swipe yes, the answer, or no,
Oh
and she swiped yeah.
oh shit. See,
And
that's the cute, bro. That's the cute stuff.
it was cool, man. And ever since it just took off, man. We just clicked. We were like best friends. We had the same humor. Like of course, we were attracted to each other. She's beautiful. She's still beautiful. I mean, I still love that girl. Always love her.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't have any animosity in my heart towards her. I moved on, and I'm grateful for what happened. But anyway, so yeah, so we move in. Things start getting a little bit more serious, and I think that's a good segue for this part of the conversation. So when you move in with someone, you really start to find out who they really are,
Exactly.
and I
Oh,
think
100%.
yeah, yeah, and it's a different. You see them in a different light because you see them at their most vulnerable point.
Exactly.
And when you
Oh yeah.
when you first start dating, it's kind of like I use the analogy of a tree. So it's like you see a tree in the summertime, it's got beautiful leaves. You're like, oh, that's a gorgeous tree, and then the winter comes around and all its leaves are falling off. So if you fall in love with the leaves and you don't fall in love with the roots, it's not there.
What meme did you take that shit from, bro?
I don't. My mom told me that a while
Dude,
ago,
that's
man.
I've never
Yeah.
heard that shit. That's why I'm asking.
Oh
That is
yeah.
good. That's a good ass way to
Uh,
explain it, bro. Because
yeah.
if you are driving through a town and you see that beautiful tree and you're like, "Oh my god, that's amazing," and you maybe come back every summer to see that town and that
Yeah.
tree,
Yeah.
but if you don't stick it, once you see it 24/7, you might not like it as much.
And that's the thing, man. And so I was a little bit in love with her roots, metaphorically. Like there's
Yeah.
parts of her that I was like, God, I love you. You're so cute. Like we connect on different frequency. Like that's the biggest part of a relationship is meeting each other on that frequency.
Yeah.
And and especially this day and age with it's just all technological. You're just you're DMing people doing this. Let's just go to bars. Let's go party. And old days, like you write her a letter, or you'd be like, "Hey, you want to go to the prom with me? Let's go get a milkshake."
Right.
And nowadays, that's just it's just fast tracked.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, we started getting serious. Started seeing different parts of her. She started. I think she just started realizing that maybe she didn't want to be in a committed relationship yet because
Right.
she was only 20 at the time. I was 21. I'm only 22 now, but so then she started doing things that I was a little bit uncomfortable with, I'm not going to lie. And at first, it wasn't like a controlling thing. It was me just being like, voicing it gently. I was like, hey, that's a little bit weird. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how I feel about that. Like, messaging her ex-boyfriend, doing this, like deleting phone calls, deleting messages, having secret conversations on Facebook. And I was like, hey, you can do it. Just be honest. Like, if you don't have anything to hide, like, it's fine. I'm not going to go through your phone. Like, I'm not that kind of guy.
Right.
Well, then it just became like a compulsive thing. Like, she would just lie about everything and everything. And then I started getting insecure.
Right.
And then it just started compounding. And these little white lies became these big, giant elephants in the room that we never wanted to confront. So there's always that tension between
Yeah.
us.
That can be bad. Yeah.
And that tension led to animosity. And then the real feelings started coming out in these fits of anger
Right.
on both sides. We would both say things that were just should not have been said.
Yeah.
And then fast forward like a year, this is just continually going on. We're having fights where like we'll break up for 2 days. Like, I mean, you were there.
Mm.
It was toxic. It was bad. It was unhealthy. But we were so desperate to not be alone.
Yeah.
And that's how it is in college, man. Like, I feel bad for college students, especially in this generation, because we have technology and we're surrounded by people, but we're still so alone.
Yeah.
And that's why so many people nowadays are depressed.
Yeah.
It's
No, I
sickening.
totally agree. And like, I think you hit on the nail when you're just like, it gets toxic, and it gets to a point by not confronting those things that it gets really, really hard to like genuinely like level with someone to understand their situation, because you're like, there's so many other things you haven't addressed yet. And I think especially when I knew you, it was it's like I was so 50-50, because every time you guys were together, you were so high on life.
Yeah.
And you were doing great, but every time you guys were getting an argument or fight, like it was real shit, and like you said, those real things were said, and that shouldn't be said. And I was like, maybe you guys should just like break up. But it's so hard to tell you, because I'm like, I don't want to be the guy that's like, hey, break up with your girlfriend, like blah 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 blah. But I also don't want to be the guy be like, stay together, when I just watch you guys like, make each other unhappy.
That's
And so that, I think a lot of maybe your family and friends and a lot of people felt the same way, because that's pretty much any relationship. It's like,
it is.
how much wrong needs to be done until you finally voice your opinion and tell them like you shouldn't be together, or at least advise them to help something. You know what I'm saying? And it did finally. I was always like that. I don't know if I was right or wrong to always like kind of just not stand by, but kind of just like, whatever you're feeling, like I'm just gonna have to agree with, but.
Yeah.
Obviously see where it ended, and maybe we should have voiced up earlier or whatever, but obviously I'm not in charge of your relationship. I can't watch over you anyways, but it's just hard, because it is such a hard situation to see somebody struggle with somebody that they genuinely love.
Yeah.
Like my mom has genuinely loved people down the past that I didn't like, maybe as a stepfather or as a person or XYZ. But at the end of the day, when I see them taking care of my brothers or taking care of my mom, and that's what needs to be done, that's what it is. If it makes her happy, that's what it is.
When you're in that situation too, like, and I think you hit it right on the head. It's like you have really high highs and really low lows. It's just like a drug, and you're addicted to those highs. And you're like, oh, but when we're together, things are so good. Like they're better than good. But when
you ignore the lows.
Yeah, and those lows get real low. Like what goes up must come down. And I stopped trying to. I was just so desperate. I was like, oh, like. I wanted to stay in this situation because it felt good for someone to love me.
Right.
Because I didn't love myself.
Right. That's a big one too.
Yep.
Don't even overplay that. Like if you do not love yourself going into a relationship, or taking care of somebody, or any, like if you do not love yourself, there's literally like there's so much work to be done there before you even like involve other things. Like,
Amen.
I think that's totally on the ball, because loving yourself is hard, and sometimes it almost feels impossible to love who you are, what you look like, how you act. And it's always, always, always those nights that you're home and you're like, why don't I do this? Why don't I have this? And you're like so conscious of it, but you don't know how to change it. It's almost like how I feel about anxiety. I am conscious of anxiety when I'm especially in the market, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to leave. Like, I just feel all the anxiety hitting me right now, and I want to leave the building. But it's like, I can never, like, how do I know it's there and I can't fix it? You know what I'm saying? So same thing with this. It's like, how do I know like this is wrong with me, or I feel like this is wrong with me, but I can't fix it? That's a hard place to be, but it obviously takes research, learning, growing as a human being, and the best of all, talking.
Exactly. You need to have an outlet. You need to have friends, outside sources, because when you're in a relationship with someone, like just like with me and my ex-girlfriend, there's always that line you don't cross, because if you cross that line, you both know there's no going back.
Yeah,
of being
exactly.
Like, hey, where is this going? Like, do you actually love me? Like these really hard questions that the elephant in the room. You're like, man, I don't want to go there. Because it's just so good. It's just so great. And then, like you said earlier, my family members, my friends, everyone around me was like, hey, they said she was a bad person, but they're on the outside of the situation.
Yeah.
I don't really think she was a bad person. She was just a 20-year-old girl still trying to figure out what she wanted, and that wasn't me.
Yeah.
And I really want to make it clear to the viewers that that's okay. If you're in that situation, whether you're a guy, girl, non-binary, whatever you are, in whatever situation or partnership that you're engaged in, it's okay to not, if it's okay for them to not want you, like to use you as a stepping stone. And if you actually love them, you'll want to see them grow.
Exactly. That's the worst, when you see a toxic relationship end and it's that person's fault and that person's a piece of shit, and it's just like, that they didn't grow. Like that is, and maybe they did in some ways. It's hard to say, but it's like, for sure a person did grow. Really, genuinely grow when they can, like, especially just get out of a relationship, or at least like just a little bit of time, a week, 2 3 weeks, month maybe.
Yeah.
But when they get out of that relationship and they say, oh my god, like, this does suck, my feelings are hurt, and I, like you said, like, I was the stepping stone for that
Mm.
person to find this person, or, you know, to fall in love this way or do XYZ. But I'm happy for him. Like, it sucks that you were the person being stepped on, but, you know, it's hard. I mean, that person's a better person, so it's
That's the biggest thing right there, man. Because even though you feel like you're being used in that situation, it's actually a blessing in disguise.
mm-hmm.
So when you're that stepping stone, you have time to sit back and reflect and be like, hey, like what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And then you have time to work on
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And then once you work on yourself and you start to love yourself, it's almost like dating yourself. Like I go to the movies alone. I sleep at night all by myself. Like I go to class by myself. I do everything by myself. And at first it's hard because you're used to
Very
having
hard. Yeah.
that like validation of someone there being like, I love you, holding your hand, kissing you.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you see something cool, you're like, oh, look at that.
Yeah.
But when you're single, you can enjoy it for yourself.
Yeah.
Even now, sometimes I'll go out for a hike or for a jog and I'll just watch the sun come up and I'm like, man, I'm glad I'm alone.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is mine. This is my moment and I can put that in my memory
Yeah, you
bank.
can remember it with yourself because you
Mm-hmm.
loved yourself and you found those things. But at first, I bet it wasn't easy, you know, especially when you're like,
Yeah.
you're so used to somebody like sleeping in the same bed every single night and
Yeah.
asking if they're hungry every single night, making food for two and
Mm-hmm.
all those kind of things. And then you get to a point where you split up and now it's like, damn.
There's a void.
Like it's kind of, and like you said, it's hard to feel, but it's like if you learn to grow from it and let them go and you care for yourself and you wish the best for them and you grow yourself and like you said, take those walks, and eventually the void will start getting filled with your own self-love.
That's exactly right. And it's really hard like for my situation and like to kind of give you guys the viewers a little bit more background on that. The way it ended was like I said, it started getting bad. I started getting controlling. And I started to be like too far with it. Like like for example, a real world example, her best friend was like, "Hey, do you want to go like Lake Havasu for spring break?" And like a normal boyfriend, like we're young, like someone that's not insecure, someone that's not jealous, someone, and if you're in a healthy relationship, like I trust you for sure. Go have fun.
Right,
I
right.
want you to have fun. But I had a gut feeling. I'm like I can't trust you, and so I legitimately told her no, and that's a huge problem. That's controlling,
Oh
and
yeah.
before like I would have never admitted to that. But that's a process of growing. So these things started happening and she started going to her outside sources too, and her parents and friends were like, he's controlling, he's toxic, which they were right.